Certified General Appraisal Test 1, Non-Mathematic Questions Study Guide. In preparing a market value appraisal with a retrospective date of value, is the appraiser allowed to consider any information after the effective date of value and why? Yes, the appraiser may use data subsequent to the effective date as a confirmation of trends. An appraiser was employed by a bank to value the leasehold interest in a multi-tenant warehouse on leased land for a mortgage loan in a federally related transaction. Under the definition of value is the appraiser what definition of value is the appraiser operating? The going concern. A residential property has a 625 square foot attached garage, 1,100 square foot basement area, 3,200 square feet above grade living space, and an unheated 425 foot enclosed porch. What is the gross living area for appraisal adjustments? 3,200 square feet. Only the above grade living space counts. Which of the following values would a bank request for a new loan on an established hotel? The going concern value. What economic principle is represented by the power trend line graph of the price per unit of local apartment complex sales? Anticipation. Which of the following demand-side economic factors creates value? Desire and effective purchasing power. An appraiser concluded a market-derived 9% overall capitalization rate within the income capitalization approach. The user of the appraisal asked the appraiser to render a second value based upon the user's required 8.75 overall rate. What definition of value implies to the secondary value conclusion? The investment value. Assuming the easement runs with the land, what term describes the easement? An easement appurtenant. If a co-owner in tenancy in common agreement is dissatisfied with the ownership arrangement, what remedies are available to the co-owner? Sell partial interest, seek voluntary partition, or demand partition by the court. What influence on value is illustrated when a property's value increases due to a water right being approved by an oversight board? Governmental. Which of the following methods of cost estimating is the most comprehensive and accurate? Quantity survey. The as vacant highest and best use is for retail, and as improved highest and best use is for single tenant office. Retail uses will support a $10 per square foot land value, whereas office uses will support a $5 per square foot land value. The appraiser values the land at $10 per square foot, and the improvements are valued at their interim contribution to value. What principle underlies this valuation process? Anticipation. What additional steps, if any, are considered in the investigation of a use that is not currently a legal permissible use? Investigate reasonable probability of a change to a permissible use. An appraiser is preparing a feasibility study of a distribution center and needs to consider interstate highway accessibility. The appraiser also conducts air and rail transportation available in the area. All of items considered collectively would be examples of what relationship? Linkage. An appraiser is contacted by a property manager to appraise a large complex non-residential property. The property manager requires the appraiser pay $3,000 to procure the assignment. How can the appraiser accept the assignment and still comply with USPAP? The appraiser must disclose the commission in the certification and any letter of transmittal that includes conclusions. As part of an analysis of an income-producing property, 3 alternative investment possibilities were analyzed and compared. The alternatives were the subject, a government fund, and a collateralized mortgage obligations fund. Which of the following appraisal principles serves as the foundation of the analysis? The opportunity cost. The analysis of comparable sales of office building indicates that after the land value and depreciated indirect costs are subtracted from the sales price, there is still an increment of value remaining. What term describes the increment of value? That is the entrepreneurial profit. The entrepreneurial profit is the actual profit, whereas the entrepreneurial incentive is something that you're hoping and planning for. So what type of roof is depicted in the diagram? Let's talk about roofs. A gambrel roof is like a traditional barn-style roof. A gable roof is like a traditional triangular house roof. A mansard is like kind of a federal-style roof where it's flat on top, but it has sloping sides. A hip roof is kind of like a square hat where it's got like the gable, but then it also, it has like 1, 2, 3, it has 4 flat sides, but they're all triangular. Kind of looks like a square hat, like a rectangular hat, I guess. Okay, what construction class of buildings has wood or light steel frames and roof structure? That is a Class D. Let's talk about the classes. Class A is fireproof steel. Class B is reinforced concrete. Class C is a masonry-bearing wall. And Class D is wood or steel stud light steel. The building capitalization rate for a commercial building is 11%. The rate of land appreciation is 3%, and the yield rate is 7%. What is the useful life of the building? So the difference between the cap rate and the yield rate is the annual depreciation. So if the cap rate, the building capitalization rate for the commercial building was 11%. And then the yield rate is the building cap rate for the commercial building is 11%, and the yield rate is 7%. So the useful life of the building is going to depreciate 4% per year. So if we have to get down to 100% depreciation divided by 4%, that's going to be 25 years of useful life. What term describes the lump sum benefit an investor receives upon termination of an investment or at the intermediate analysis period during the term of an investment? The reversion. A staff appraiser employed by a local bank for 5 years plans to leave the bank to open an independent appraisal business. Must the appraiser remove all work files for assignments completed for the bank? No, the appraiser may make arrangements with the bank to access or retrieve the files. The buyer of one of the comparable sales in an appraisal of an industrial building assumed a mortgage at below market rates. Analysis of the other comparables indicates that a financing conditions adjustment is necessary. What is the direction of the adjustment to the sale and why? It's a negative adjustment because the sale is adjusted to the subject. An appraiser receives an appraisal assignment. The appraiser has not performed any services in connection with this property in the past 3 years. What disclosures are required under USPAP? The appraiser must disclose in the report's certification that no prior services have been performed in the last 3 years. The assignment is to value a 9,600 square foot church on a 25-acre single-family parcel. Residential land is currently selling for $55,000 an acre. However, demand for new single-family construction is 8 years out, with a discount rate of 15%. Similar churches have sold recently between $50 and $55 a square foot. What type of value is illustrated? That is the market value. A dairy farmer is currently milking 750 cows in the subject facility on 400 acres. The milking facility has stalls for 1,000 cows, but does not have the land base to house that many cows without a manure treatment facility. A manure treatment facility costs $600,000. Farms with manure treatment facilities sell for $1,600 per cow. Facilities without manure treatment sell for $1,200 per cow. It will be 15 years before the city grows outward enough to consider a subdivision. Subdivision land is currently selling for $5,000 per acre, with a 10% discount rate. Dairy farming and residential subdivision are physically possible and legally permissible uses. What is the highest and best use of the subject? Improve it with a manure treatment facility. A parcel in the path of development is zoned for high-density apartment use. It currently has a single-unit owner-occupied dwelling on the site. The improvements do not represent the highest and best use of the site, but the current use is likely to continue until competing sites are developed. How is the highest and best use of the site as improved described? That is an interim use. An appraiser completed an assignment about 2 months ago. This appraiser has recently been contacted by someone who claims to be a review appraiser hired by the appraiser's client. The reviewer wanted to ask questions about the report. Are there any conditions under which the appraiser may discuss the appraisal with the reviewer and why? Yes, if the appraiser receives authorization from the client. A subject has an actual age of 25 years, an effective age of 15 years, and a remaining useful life of 45 years. What is the total economic life of the subject? To determine that, you add the effective life and the effective age of 15 years to the remaining useful life for a total of 60 years. The appraisal assignment is a residential property in a residential/commercial zone. Initial research indicates the contributory value of the improvements is $150,000, extracted from residential sales. The commercial lot value is $230,000. Residential lots sell for $100,000. Demolition costs are $1,500. What is the highest and best use? It is residential. Because the improvements have a contributory value of $150, and the lot sells for $100, so that would be $250,000 versus the commercial lot value is $230,000, and then demo costs are $15,000. So $250 minus $15, $235. So residential is just a little more valuable. Which influence on real estate is considered economic? The extent of owner occupancy. Because if they can't afford it, then that's an economics. In what part of the appraisal report must prior services be disclosed? The certification. What type of assignment should be employed to determine general conditions of supply, demand, and pricing for a specific property type? That is a market analysis. The subject property is a 6,000 foot by 1,452 foot home site with a single unit dwelling. When the site was platted, there was no zoning. The current zoning requires a 160 acre minimum site size for a residence. What is the status of the lot? So if you do the multiplication of 6,000 by 1,452, it ends up being like 200 acres, and it's required to be 160 acre minimums for a residence. So the status of the lot is surplus land. The appraisal assignment of a building under construction requires a value use as of the date of stabilized occupancy. What value is required and what assignment condition is employed? This is a prospective market value because we're looking at it at a future point in time when it's done at stable occupancy, and we're making an extraordinary assumption. Prospective market value and extraordinary assumption. Because we don't know that it's going to have stabilized occupancy. We can't know that. So we have to make the extraordinary assumption that at a point in the future of our effective date, prospective market value, that we are making the extraordinary assumption that occupancy will be stabilized. What principle describes the ability of an individual or group to participate in a market? That's the effective purchasing power. What term refers to a division of a total market based on the preferences of buyers and sellers? A submarket. An appraisal report allegedly contains misleading information. What entity has the authority to determine if a violation of USPAP has occurred? The State Appraiser Regulatory Agency. The subject has a 0.83 acre site with 189 square feet of street frontage that is zoned R7 single unit residential with a 7,000 square foot minimum size. Newly created lots must have a 50 foot of street frontage. There is a house on the site. The house exhibits deferred maintenance. The cost to demolish the house is $32,000. The cost to update the house for sale is $20,000. The cost to subdivide the site is $12,000 per lot, created after subdivision. The value of the property in its as-is condition is $660,000. Sites similar to those which could be created after subdivisions are selling for $200,000. If updated and subdivided, the house on its smaller site would have an estimated value of $325,000. The current time frame to complete necessary permit and infrastructure improvements is 6 months. The parcel that will be created with the existing house as the result of the subdivision will have land that is not needed to support the improvement. However, it cannot be separated from the property and sold. Which of the following terms identifies this land? Surplus land. The subject property is a single unit residence situated on a commercially zoned lot in a transitional neighborhood. The land is valued at $60,000, utilizing commercial use land sales in the intermediate neighborhood. Overall property value as a residence is $80,000. Demolition costs are $5,000. Based on an allocation study, the typical ratio of land value to property value for residential property is 20%. Based on this data, what is the highest and best use, both as vacant and as improved? As vacant, its use would be commercial. Highest and best use as improved is residential. A large parcel of pasture land is located just off a new interstate. Market conditions and municipal services are such that the highest and best use is for development of a major commercial or residential project, with a land value over $100,000 per acre. The property has been in the ownership of the same family for years. Cattle are grazing on the site. The local municipal property appraiser sets the value as agricultural land at $8,000 per acre, and the ad valorem taxes are based upon this lower figure. What value definition applies to the taxable value of this site? It's the value in use. I remember this question from one of my tests, so I'm going to read it for practice. The subject property has 200 acres of improved pasture, 300 acres of native pasture, and 500 acres of woodland. Comparable A has 300 acres of improved pasture, 300 acres of native pasture, and 400 acres of woodland. Comparable A sold for $1,050 per acre. Assuming native pasture sells for 80% of improved pasture prices and woodlands sell for 40% of improved pasture prices, what is the per acre value of the subject? $960 per acre. The assignment is a multi-unit apartment house. These comparable sales in the area that sold in the last year indicate landlords are having difficulty raising rents. In the last 15 days, the municipality announced a tax increase of 10% to update an aging water system. What is the effect on indication of value and why? Value will decline. The net operating income will decline. The appraiser developed an opinion of market value and analyzed all the sales of the subject property that occurred within 3 years prior to the effective date. The appraiser did not analyze prior sales of the comparable sales used in the sales comparison approach. What does USPAP require regarding the analysis of prior sales? 3-year sales history of the subject and 1-year sales history of the comparable properties are required to be analyzed. The scope of work of the assignment requires the development of an opinion of the least fee interest in a commercial building. Which interest is being valued? The landlord's. A appraisal review assignment includes the client's request that the reviewer either agree with the appraiser's value or disagree and conclude the reviewer's value opinion in the report as of the date of review. Can the assignment be accepted and why? Yes, the reviewer may develop an alternative value, and the effective date may be different than the date of the work under review. When potential home buyers investigate the zoning of nearby properties, what influence on value are they considering? Governmental. All 1 to 4 unit residential properties are required 6-month redemption period after foreclosure sale, so the borrower might be able to pay any deficiencies and redeem the property. What type of influence on real estate is described by this action? Governmental. The subject property is a 450-acre grain farm with storage capacity of 120,000 bushels. There are no sales of local grain farms, but 2 farms about 45 miles west sold this year, and the sales indicated that the bins contributed 15 cents per bushel. Residential land values have been rising rapidly in the immediate area of the subject as local developers have continued to buy farms for subdivision purposes. Local land values rose from $1,200 per acre to $3,000 per acre last year, and from $3,000 to $5,000 per acre this year. The appraiser concludes the value of the subject based on the local land sales plus the contributory value of the bins. What principle has the appraiser violated? Consistent use. What force is represented by the mean and median household income level? Economic. In appraisal assignment, the definition of market value includes exposure time as a component. What USPAP requirement is relevant to this assignment? An opinion of reasonable exposure time must be developed in the report. USPAP requires exposure time. An appraiser was asked to update an appraisal performed by another appraiser who works at a different firm. May the appraiser accept this assignment and why? Yes, the appraiser may prepare a new report and incorporate the original report. Which of the following techniques should be used to perform a qualitative analysis? Ranking. You should rank them based on the quality. In preparing a market value appraisal with a retrospective date of value, is the appraiser allowed to consider any information after the effective date of value and why? Yes, the appraiser may use data subsequent to the effective date as a confirmation of trends. The appraisal assignment of a building under construction requires a value as of the date of stabilized occupancy. What value is required and what assignment condition is employed? Prospective market value and the extraordinary assumption. You have no way of knowing that the occupancy will be stabilized. What technique can be utilized to value a leasehold estate? Present worth of the rent advantage. What type of risk affecting operating income due to shifts in demand or supply? That's market risk. What type of risk affects operating income due to shifts in demand or supply? That is a market risk. An attorney requested an oral opinion of value prior to the completion of a written appraisal report. At minimum, the substantive matters of which of the following report options must be met in the oral report. Restricted use appraisal report. An appraiser receives an assignment to review an appraisal 6 months ago. In the development of the review, the appraiser had gathered the pertinent information and began the reporting process. Which of the following information must be included in the report? Identity of the client and intended user, the intended use, effective date of the original appraisal. Thanks for listening. Good luck.